On behalf of Kevin, a warm welcome to all of you in the Second Act Creator Newsletter community. For this special explainer, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to imagine a summit between two of the most brilliant minds in business, and we're going to explore how their combined wisdom can help us tackle one of life's biggest questions. How do we actually build a life that's truly fulfilling?
So just imagine for a second, what if you could sit down with Peter Drucker and Clayton Christensen? I mean, these are two titans who completely reshaped how we think about business. But what if, instead of talking corporate strategy, they turned those powerful analytical tools inward, toward the most personal project of all, crafting a well-lived life? Let's dive into the conversation they might have had.
You know, Christensen often kicked off his discussions not with some grand theory, but with a pattern he just couldn't shake. He'd look around at his classmates from Harvard Business School. We're talking about the best of the best, people who were wildly successful by every external measure. And he saw this deep, troubling paradox. They had the promotions, they had the huge salaries, the fancy titles, but so many of them were unfulfilled, and the personal lives were often a mess.
And that, right there, illustrates the core issue for so many of us, especially as we start thinking about our second act. That feeling of dissatisfaction, it's not a sign that you failed, it's a signal. It's a signal that the personal operating system you've been running on for years, the one based on climbing the ladder and meeting external goals, is starting to crash. It's time for an upgrade.
So where do we find this upgrade? Well, the foundation comes from two monumental pieces of thinking. First, Christensen's work on how will you measure your life, which really grew out of that paradox he saw in his classmates. And second, Peter Drucker's absolute classic, Managing Oneself, which is basically a guide to becoming the CEO of your own life. These two frameworks give us the tools to build a brand new, much more robust operating system.
So how do so many smart, driven people get so far off track? It's a huge question, right? Well, Christensen's diagnosis starts by looking at the very definition of success we're all chasing. And it turns out a lot of us are playing the wrong game entirely.
Okay, so Christensen makes this brilliant distinction here. On one hand, you have what he calls hygiene factors, things like a good salary, job security, status. Now, these are essential. If they're bad, you're going to be miserable, no question. But, and this is the part that changes everything, making them better and better doesn't actually make you happy. True, deep satisfaction, that comes from what he calls motivators, a sense of contribution, real personal growth, and genuine responsibility.
And there's the trap. It's so easy to spend the first half of our lives getting really good at the hygiene game. We rack up all the external markers of success, we get rid of the things that make us dissatisfied, and we think, okay, this must be happiness. But it's not. It's just the absence of unhappiness. It's like turning off a really annoying buzzing sound in a room. The silence is a relief, for sure, but it's not music.
This is where Peter Drucker's thinking just cuts right to the bone. He would ask this piercing question. Whether you realize it or not, your life is being graded by a scorecard. But is it your scorecard? Or is it one you just kind of inherited from your parents, from society, maybe from your friends? Because trying to get a high score on a metric that was never truly yours, that is a guaranteed path to feeling empty down the road.
Okay, so if the why of the problem is a flawed measurement system, what's the how? How does this actually play out in our lives? Well, it's subtle, and it comes down to something every business leader understands perfectly: resource allocation.
Christensen's insight here is just profound. He says, your life's strategy isn't what you say is important. It's not your list of values or your New Year's resolutions. Your real strategy is revealed by where you actually invest your most precious, non-renewable resources: your time, your energy, and your focus. Full stop.
I mean, really think about that. Forget what you intended to do for a minute. Just look at your calendar from the last 7 days. Where did your time actually go? Where did your best, most creative energy go? That right there, that was your strategy in action. And sometimes the answer can be a little uncomfortable.
So why is it so easy to get this wrong? Well, because as high achievers, we are especially vulnerable to this trap. Your career gives you quick, clear feedback. You close the deal, you get a bonus. You finish a project, you get praise. It's like a little dopamine hit every time. But investments in your relationships, in your health, in your creative life, those are long horizon investments. The feedback is slow, it's ambiguous. It's like planting an oak tree. You don't do it for the instant gratification. You do it for the shade you'll get years and years from now.
So, if our default programming is kind of leading us astray, what's the solution? This is where Drucker steps in with his big idea. He argues that in the world we live in now, each of us has to become our own chief executive officer. We need a rigorous, deliberate system for managing ourselves.
And Drucker gives us this incredibly powerful yet simple tool to do it. It's called feedback analysis. It's so easy, but it's wildly effective. Whenever you make a big decision, like taking a new job or starting a major project, you just write down exactly what you expect the outcome to be. Then, and this is key, you put a reminder in your calendar for 9 or 12 months later. When that reminder pops up, you pull out your notes and you compare reality to what you expected.
When you do this consistently, you start to build this amazing database of evidence about yourself. It replaces guesswork with actual data, and it allows you to answer these 5 critical questions not based on what you wish was true, but on what your own performance proves to be true. Questions like, how do I perform and where do I belong, become things you can answer with hard evidence, not just a gut feeling. This is how you find out where you can make your greatest contribution.
And this is the fundamental shift in mindset. The whole point of this, especially for the second half of life, isn't necessarily about finding some bigger, crazier dream based on wishful thinking. It's about becoming a better governor of your own life, making deliberate choices based on a deep, evidence-based understanding of who you are and what you're actually built for.
Okay, this has been a really powerful framework, but the big question is always, how do we make it real? How do we get out of the theory and into action? So let's talk about 3 concrete things you can do starting today to begin installing this new operating system in your own life.
First, do that 7-day calendar audit we talked about. Seriously, look back at last week and circle the 2 blocks of time that felt like a real contribution, where you were in your element. Then, look at what pushed everything else out. Second, choose just one second-half metric. Maybe it's trusted home, or your creative output, or your health. Start tracking it and let it compete for your attention with your default work metrics. And third, just run one feedback loop. You don't have to wait a year. Pick one decision you're making this week, write down what you expect, and set a reminder to review it in just 90 days. Start building that muscle.
And that brings us full circle, right back to the beginning. Back to that ultimate question that Clayton Christensen posed to his students, and really, to all of us. This isn't just a philosophical question, it's a strategic one. Because the metrics you choose to live by, whether you choose them consciously or not, will absolutely determine how you allocate your life.
On behalf of Kevin, I really hope you found this imagined conversation helpful. As you think about designing your own second act, the power is now in your hands to pause, to reflect, and to begin that crucial work of governing your life with real intention. We'll see you next week for more from the Second Act Creator Newsletter.